This is the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast, Episode 6. The Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast is a bi-weekly podcast dedicated to the world of scuba diving, ocean health, sustainability, and fostering a new generation of ocean stewards through diving education. Well, hello again, everyone, and as always, thank you for tuning into this latest episode. I'm Jeff Centropino, founder and president of the Scuba Educational Alliance of Connecticut. Now, I'm coming to you a little later than normal. I had originally planned to do this episode before Thanksgiving, but I was very much under the weather for the past week and have had a very persistent cough. But feeling a little bit better today with the help of some prescription cough medicine, so let's struggle through. But I do hope you had a very happy Thanksgiving, and now it's the sprint towards the year end. 2024 has certainly been a big year of change for me. Good change as I move beyond the dive shop and into some additional areas of volunteer work and a few other projects. Hard to believe that the end of the year is only a few short weeks away. We have finally gotten some rain up here in the Northeast. It has been very dry for a long time, and there were several brush fires around New England. I was up in Danvers, Massachusetts for a Boston Sea Rovers meeting a couple of weeks ago, and you could really smell the smoke from all the fires. At first I thought there was something wrong with my car before realizing what it was. We are still running a deficit of rain, but every little bit helps. On today's show, my featured segment will be a rundown on the Diving Equipment and Marketing Association show that wrapped up just before Thanksgiving, and it was a good one. But first, let's start off with Sea State. News and information. This is Sea State here on the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast. Well, it has certainly been a tough year for Liveaboard dive boats. They've been plagued with a number of accidents, and recently there were a couple of more. On November 6th, the MV Noran, an Egyptian liveaboard, caught fire and sank at Daedalus Reef. The Noran was a 36-meter mahogany-hulled liveaboard that had a capacity of 24 divers. The boat was owned by Red Sea Explorers. Fortunately, all of the passengers and crew were safely evacuated and were transferred to MV Tala, a tech diving liveaboard also owned by Red Sea Explorers. The group was returned to Port Galib. So this is the fourth liveaboard to sink in the Egyptian Red Sea in 2024. That record is certainly not something we expect, and hopefully this will get corrected with some rigor and safety. Then in the Maldives, the Blue Voyager, operated by Master Liveaboards, experienced a major fire while undergoing refit. The vessel is a 37-meter steel-hulled boat that can accommodate 26 guests with 3 suites and 10 cabins. The Blue Voyager is Master Liveaboard's only vessel in the Maldives, and it was built in 2001. It operated out of Hamali, Maldives. Not sure what they will be doing going forward. Now, I talked to a fellow DEMA board member who had booked to sail on the Blue Voyager next year, right after the repairs were completed. Again, fortunately, no injuries were reported. Undergoing refit can be a hazardous time for a vessel. I know, having taken a Navy ship through an overhaul. We all know that plastic utensils are a major source of plastic pollution. I hate it when Dunkin' Donuts gives me a plastic knife with my bagel. I don't want it, I don't need it, and I certainly don't want it to end up as plastic pollution. New Jersey is trying to do something interesting on the plastic pollution front. The New Jersey Senate Environment and Energy Committee put forth a bill requiring most restaurants to provide washable, reusable utensils for customers eating on site. Plus, you would have to request plastic utensils if you're getting food delivered or to go. No more just plopping the plastic into the bag. Now, there's a lot of opposition to the bill. Schools would be required to have metal utensils, and they're concerned that the kids might not know how to use them. Not sure I understand that. Or potentially use them as weapons. There's an exemption for restaurants that are 50 seats or less. Like I said, there's a lot of opposition to the bill and the cost that it would require restaurants to incur to implement. I get it. No one likes added cost, but we are all paying a steep price with plastic pollution. Now here is something that we absolutely don't like to hear about in scuba diving: divers being stranded in the water. And this happened recently in Hawaii. 5 scuba divers who were stranded off of Oahu were fortunately rescued by a couple who were sailing from Kaneohe to Honolulu. The couple spotted 5 little dots floating in the water and then heard their screams for help. Apparently, the 5 divers had been in the water for several hours. They had somehow gotten separated from the dive boat. The couple called the Coast Guard, who dispatched a helicopter. I guess the sailing boat wasn't not very big and they could not take the divers on board, but they stayed with them until the dive boat returned from Aaron's Dive Shop. From the pictures I saw, it looked like the divers had SMBs deployed, but not sure if they had a distress beacon like the Nautilus or something like that. The divers suffered from vomiting and hypothermia. Not exactly sure why the boat would have left the scene in the first place or not radioed that they were missing 5 divers. Something doesn't feel right here. In any case, it does reinforce my practice of carrying my marine GPS when diving. Things can go wrong and you need to be prepared. For me, I really believe that renewable energy is more important now than ever. And there was an article recently in the Portland Press Herald out of Portland, Maine, that's about wind energy development in the Gulf of Maine. 2 companies bid $22 million for the rights to develop wind energy in the Gulf. If developed, this project would generate enough energy to power 2.3 million homes, and that's according to the Federal Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. More than a dozen companies were eligible to bid, but only Avangrid Renewable LLC of Portland, Oregon, and Invenergy NE Offshore Wind LLC bid on the rights. With these bids, they now have the rights to submit plans for building out a wind farm. It is anticipated that it will take about 10 years or more maybe to complete. This now brings the approved number of commercial-scale offshore wind projects to 10. There were 0 in January of 2021. Not sure how the future will play out now, but I gotta say, I saw a lot of wind turbines as I flew across the country last week to Las Vegas. Something seems to be working here. I came across a story out of Newfoundland, Canada, where divers recovered a World War II artifact from a crashed B-24 Liberator bomber. The crash happened in September 1943 when the aircraft went down in Gander Lake, Newfoundland, shortly after takeoff. The wreck was actually located in 2022 and is sitting upside down in 133 feet of water. Now, it was difficult to find given the size of the lake, which is 55 kilometers long or about 34 miles and reaches a depth of 940 feet. Some even questioned if the aircraft was there. But a group of divers recently recovered the bomb release interval control box, also called the bombardier's box, from the nose section, and the plan is to put it on display at the North Atlantic Aviation Museum in Gander, Newfoundland. 4 crew members died in the crash and only 1 body was recovered. They hope to return at some point and recover the remains of the other 3, but that may prove difficult given the way the aircraft is sitting and the depth. And finally, here is something really exciting coming from Stream2Sea. Now, you've heard of me tout their products on my other podcast, and they're continuing to innovate with their sunscreen. At the DEMA Show, they rolled out their new Coral Care sunscreen, and what is so different about this is that the product incorporates coral nutrients that help feed coral. So now, the sunscreen is not only doing no harm to the coral, it's actually helping. Wow, how is that for innovation? The Coral Care sunscreen is priced the same as their everyday mineral sunscreen. Now you can protect yourself from the UVA and UVB rays while also helping save coral reefs with your sunscreen. Well, that's it for this installment of Sea State here on the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast. Arguably, the Diving Equipment and Marketing Associations, or DEMA Show, is the most important yearly event supporting our industry. And since this is such an important trade show for scuba diving, I wanted to take this time to give you a recap of the show, which wrapped up the Friday before Thanksgiving in Las Vegas. Now, it's no secret that I came to scuba diving a little bit later in life than many, and even though I had been a dive professional for almost 20 years, it wasn't until 2017 that I attended my first DEMA show. We had taken over ownership of Scuba Shack in early 2017. My eyes were really opened at that show, and I came to realize just how valuable this event is for our industry, and that it was even more apparent after we didn't have a show in 2020. A virtual event just didn't cut it. The last time the show was in Las Vegas was in 2021, and it was still a struggle with lingering impacts from the pandemic. Attendance was down significantly in 2021 as it was very difficult for international travel and testing as well as mask mandates for large gatherings. But DEMA persevered, and that is when I really knew that being a part of DEMA was important and led me to being elected to the board of directors, an honor and incredible experience. So fast forward to 2024, and the DEMA show was back in Las Vegas. Now, at last year's show in New Orleans, we learned that the DEMA show would overlap with the Las Vegas Formula One Grand Prix, and that caused a whole lot of concern for many. It took a lot of research and communication to alleviate those fears. Many people thought that rooms would not be available or that it would be very expensive to fly into Las Vegas. None of that happened. In fact, the DEMA hotel block was actually an incredible bargain at either the Westgate or the Renaissance Hotel, and airfare proved to be no different than normal. Additionally, a lot of people thought it would be difficult to navigate the city, and while there were some traffic detours for the race, they mostly impacted locals, and with the Westgate and the convention center being on the monorail, I found it very simple and easy to get to the Strip. So there may have been some folks who didn't come because of the race, but I've got to say it had little impact on the show. Donna and I actually flew in on Saturday. Now, I needed to be there early for the board of directors meeting on Sunday. The board meeting was held in the rooms behind the exhibit floor, and that gave me a chance to see all of the activity in preparation for the event. The exhibitors were hard at work getting their booth setups. The level of effort really makes you appreciate the commitment and dedication to the scuba industry. At the board meeting, Tom Ingram gave us an update on the show, and from the numbers, this year was fairly close to the numbers from last year's show in New Orleans, from both an exhibitor and attendee perspective. That was welcome news given the Grand Prix concerns, so we all felt very good going into the show. Monday was a free day for me, so Donna and I decided to do a little tour out to the Hoover Dam and Grand Canyon. I'd never been to either, and the Grand Canyon was on our list of places to visit, so we headed out on the Comedy on Deck bus tour very early. Now, that was a little bit of a twist that there's a stand-up comic who is your guide for the day. Now, it was amazing to see the remarkable engineering of the dam and then the remarkable way nature has made the Grand Canyon. I would highly recommend that you get to both at some point. The show opened at 10 a.m. on Tuesday with the ribbon cutting, and that triggered the initial rush towards the exhibitors' booths. Now, I had developed a list of exhibitors that I wanted to see, and I also had a list of booths to visit to thank them for attending. I also had several presentations that I hoped to get to. Now, this year was quite different for me since we sold the dive shop in July. I wouldn't be sitting down with each of our suppliers like I did in years past to discuss the upcoming year and look at future purchases. This time, I would look at things from a very different point of view. No doubt travel is really big right now in the industry, and there were operators from every point of the globe. If you want to go someplace specific, you can find them at the DEMA Show. I did attend one presentation that had a very unique destination. The place is called Sea Adventure in Malaysia. It's a resort built for diving on a decommissioned oil rig. Talk about different. I also attended a session on Indonesia and one on Papua New Guinea. On Tuesday afternoon, I participated in a panel session with the other writers from Scuba Diving Industry magazine. There were about 10 of us who talked about writing for the magazine and fielded questions from the attendees. Willie Quine, who is the publisher of the magazine, hosted the event, and I was humbled to be a part of the group. Tuesday night was the Divers Alert Network reception back at the Westgate. It was crowded, and they had a lot of food spread throughout the ballroom. Unfortunately, the crowd was quite noisy and inconsiderate when during Bill Zeifel's presentation. It was quite upsetting to see, for me to see folks who couldn't give Bill the common courtesy of keeping quiet during his remarks. I just don't understand how folks can act that way and take advantage of Dan's hospitality. Wednesday morning kicked off with the annual DEMA membership update. Now, after a nice breakfast, Tom Ingram gave us a great update on DEMA's activities for the year and particularly asked for our support for the Dive Boat Act, which is hopefully going to make it into this year's Coast Guard Reauthorization Act. This one is critical to keeping dive boats affordable in the United States by reversing the law targeting dive boats post-conception fire. I again had the privilege of presenting at the show. This year my talk was on how dive shops can improve their cash flow by addressing several cost-saving areas. As far as new products, there were a lot. I already told you about Stream2Sea. Well, Halcyon unveiled their new dive computer, and they had a lot of interest in the rebreather on display. I also got to check out the Ratio dive computer. Apex had their new RK4 fins on display and showcased their new EVX200 regulator. I also came across a product called FogX, which is an anti-fog film that you put on your mask. And then there was EvoLogic Diver Navigation System, and that's a high-end system built for public safety and military. Very interesting technology. As for underwater camera gear, it's all you could ever want. I snagged a new GoPro Hero 13 with housing, 64GB micro SD, and dry backpack for a very good price. There was just so much to see. Overall, I would categorize the DEMA Show 2024 as a great success as we continue to build from the dark days of the pandemic. Next year, the show will be in Orlando, and I hope that those who missed this year will realize how valuable this 4-day event is to our scuba diving industry. I realize that the DEMA Show is for those professionals in the dive industry, but I think that every diver should know about DEMA and why it matters. And when you're in your local dive shop, just ask them about the show. Well, that wraps up this latest episode. I made it through. Hopefully it doesn't sound too choppy. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope again that you had a happy Thanksgiving. Bye for now. This has been the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast, a show dedicated to the world of scuba diving, ocean health, sustainability, and fostering a new generation of ocean stewards through diving education. Talk to you again real soon.